So I'll carry on.
Hmm. Yes.
So we boarded this ship,
Hmm.
one of the Navy ships, and a very tight ship. We had to live like the Navy crew, share toilets, do everything in the morning. We sailed from the central portion of the Andaman and Nicobar Islands to the lowest island, which is the Great Nicobar. Now, the Great Nicobar is the southernmost point that India has. It's even more south than the Kanyakumari of mainland India. So that point has got a huge lighthouse. And that lighthouse is known as Indira Point. That's the lowest, southernmost point of India. And beyond that is a beach where there had been some trees growing out of this, or a coral island. And the trees had been growing out of this coral island. And what had happened is that those Sikh families who had been thrown out of West Punjab on partition had to be settled somewhere. So some of them were settled in the Jammu Samba border, Jammu Pathankot border area along the borders of Pakistan. Some were settled in Punjab near the border areas, but in Punjab there's no room, because people already own land and they're not prepared to give it. And some of them, after being asked, were ready to come to Great Nicobar Island to develop this island. They wanted people to live there and to create villages and townships so that we could defend them. And that would be like an outpost of India. Otherwise, it was barren. Nobody was living there. So the government made arrangements, a lot of money spent. They cleared many of these trees near the beach. And this was the beach we were going to attack in case it had been captured by some hostile groups. In those days, who was the hostile group? China wasn't on the scene then. People used to think of Indonesia or others. We were probably not that friendly with Indonesia then. It's a very friendly nation now. And we were worried about Thailand, we were worried about Indonesia and all these people. So fine, we the ships came early hours of the morning, about 1,000 meters away from the land, and a whole lot of senior officials and uh, Army, Navy, Air Force, etc., watching the scene, including the large number of Sardar families who were watching what the hell was happening. And then we debouched from these ships with 3 or 4 of these PT-76 tanks lined up, firing very light pistols to show that we can fire on the while we are swimming. And we landed on the beach and declared ourselves successful of having recaptured the beach. They made a small airstrip there. It's only for a very small aeroplane. Could not seat more than 4 or 5 people, auto type of aircraft. And eventually, General Veja and I got into that, and we managed to get back to Port Blair, and from thence came back to India. Now, this is very interesting to see the coordination between the Navy, Army, and Air Force. And this was the only outpost of India where this was being exercised and practiced. It wasn't now, recently they have made the Chief of Defense Staff, General Robert to start with, and now General uh, Lakshman. He has to coordinate the 3 services because 3 services have their own budgets and their own views on life and how they're supposed to fight wars. And we need them all to cooperate very closely together and to see whether we can save money if we can combine their logistics services and other sort of services. So this is all being practiced in 1982-83, which I had the uh, experience of joining in and to see for myself as to what are the requirements to make these 3 services function one-to-one. For instance, I'll give you an example. If you were a warship with guns, then and you are fighting a battle on the land, you should get the support of the guns of the warship, like artillery fire, for your actions, military actions on land. Now, these are done in World War. There are all sorts of procedures, very complicated. Now, technology is much improved. Wireless communications are much improved. And so, therefore, we hope that this develops. There are a lot of experiences here. Now, in military operations, another point I'd like to tell you, there was a lot of discussion about pays and perks of the army vis-a-vis the police, vis-a-vis the bureaus. Now, these are all government servants. And we have different sets of pays and salaries. So everybody looking at the other guy to say that he's getting more, why aren't but I also getting more? I'll give you an example. If a deputy commissioner is posted in Shimla, Shimla was supposed to be a very difficult posting in the days of the British. He gets an allowance every month of a couple of $1,000 for having gone to a difficult location in Shimla. If a military officer is posted to Shimla, he gets nothing. Nor does a police officer. Now, if Shimla is only about 6,000 to 7,000 feet in height, those of us who are in Ladakh, Siachen Glacier, who go up to 16 to 18,000 feet, we are getting much less, about 500, 600 rupees in those days. So a lot of discussion about this. Now, I don't know what the answer is, but there's not a, the bureaucracy thinks that, especially the IAS, they think they're the superior human beings of this world because they've done the PhDs or MAs or whatever they are, MScs and so on, then the Missouri Academy, and after that, your Master of all trades. So they must get the maximum salary because they run the government. That's because the politician doesn't run the government, the bureaucracy. So the police and the other government services like engineering services, science services, they're all joined through the IAS system of examination. If they're not selected for the IAS, you can go to the provincial, that's the province civil service, or the state, or they can become police personnel, or they can become engineering services, maintenance services, land and hiring services, a whole lot of services of the government of India. They're all on lesser grades of pay. So they say, we went through the same training, why don't we get the same? This dichotomy is there. In my time, the Vice Chief of Army Staff was a person called Lieutenant General Sinha. Mane Sinha is his name. He's from the Gurkhas. He was the man I told you earlier that when we first landed in Kashmir, and my brother's battalion was the second to go after the first Royal Sikhs went there, Mane Sinha was the only Indian in the office of transportation in the army headquarters. Rest were all British. And he really was in charge of getting the fly-in by large number of Dakota aircraft, 100 sorties a day almost. There's a huge airlift to take the Indian Army to Srinagar dirt airfield. And my brother went there. I knew my brother very well, so my brother was a couple of years senior to him. They used to sit on the airfield chatting before my brother went into operation, got killed. This is Major Somnath Sharma, who got the Paramveer Chakra. So I know Mane Sinha very well. He was the vice chief. He got a very, very sharp brain. And he was the adjutant general before he became the vice chief, the adjutant at that time. And what he could argue against the bureaucracy and others was so explicit that everybody wanted him out of the way. His arguments extremely logical, which went to the politician to say why the military pays and perks, etc., should be increased or whatever the reason was. They wanted him out of the way. Now, he was the vice chief when I was the PGMO, and he had commanded Western Command. He had done an army command, came as vice chief. And he was the senior most. So when General Krishna Rao was going to retire, all expected him to become the army chief. But Indira Gandhi, who was the prime minister, she superseded him and made General Vaidya, who was the Eastern Army commander, the army chief. See? So since Mane Sinha was superseded, he resigned his commission and he went home. He came to MO director to tell us, and we felt that he had been done down a bit. So I asked him, I said, General, are you going to contest this? Because there's nothing wrong with his service or career. He said, no. It's the right of the Prime Minister to select the next chief, and she selected someone but I won't serve under him. He's much junior to me. So I am going to resign the commission and go. So he resigned his commission and went home. His future is that when the BJP government took power, 98 or so, he went as our ambassador, as a high commissioner to Nepal, and then he became a governor of Assam, and then he became the governor of J&K for a few tenures. So he retired at a very high level, but he was a very fine man, and he was in charge of military operations. So he went away, resigned, and General Veda took over. Now, General Veda is a very humble man. He's a very good man. As a human being, you can't do better. And he has got 2 Mahavir Chakras, so he has the staunch attitude in battle which is required. He took over as the army chief. And since he knew me very well, I'd been his, I knew him when I was a captain and he was a major in Ahmednagar. And he came to MO Directorate and asked me, he said, do you think that the Gurkha Brigade, there are about 30 battalions of Gurkhas in the army, are very upset that I have superseded a Gurkha officer who was senior to me and who became a chief. I said, it doesn't matter. You have no say in it, and neither do the Gurkhas nor do we. It's a political appointment. You've been appointed by the Prime Minister, so that's it. You're the army chief, and the other gentleman has to retire, so he retired. There's no big. He said, do you think the government was concerned? They rang up the MO Directorate that there may be some agitation on the part of the Gurkhas. We said, no, there's been nothing like this. So, the bureaucracy was a little concerned about this supersession. We went through that. General Veda became the army chief. And the vice chief, who is responsible for the military operations directorate, also was a chap called General Rawat, Lieutenant General Rawat. We call him Ganju Rawat. I don't know, that's his nickname. He's also in charge of Ladakh Scouts. He's done a lot of work in Ladakh and northern Kashmir, etc. He became the vice. And that's one thing that happened. Now, we had a case. It is one of those things that happen sometimes. I suppose they happen in any country. In Delhi cantonment, the cantonment area is under the military. That means you've got a Delhi area commander who looks after the cantonment, because cantonments are meant for housing military troops. But what happens over the years is that a large number of cantonment shops come up, bazaars, to cater to the requirements of the military and families who are living there. So since ancient history, from the time of the British, we've had a number of cantonment bazaars in Delhi cantonment. And these bazaars do uniforms, they do accoutrements, they Karyana shops, you name it, the tailor shops, all sorts of, for catering to the needs of military families. Now, a case happened here, quite interesting. Near the cantonment was air defense artillery regiment. And one of the Jawans had recently got married. So he had a very pretty wife, and he was living there in the cantonment. And he went shopping after a few months of marriage with her. And while there were 2 or 3 shops there. So she went into one of the shops, and this chap meanwhile was looking at another shop. So some people got hold of him and pushed him to a distant area. A bit of a struggle took place. And there were some other Jawans there who freed him from there. And when he came back to the first shop to find his wife, she had disappeared. So then he asked the shopkeepers, where's the lady? So they said, which lady? We don't know anything about it. Now he was quite upset because he knew she'd gone into the shop, and she disappeared. She's a young girl, and the shopkeepers are not very trustworthy. They'd been there for many years. So he went straight back to his unit, which was nearby, about a few hundred meters, and he put the word around. It's about 7 o'clock in the evening. He put the word out that, look, somebody captured my wife, kidnapped my wife. So there was no officer present. So the three-striper, Havaldar, there, he told the whole company, the whole battery, as you call it, the 2, 3 barracks, come on, chaps, let's go and find the lady. So they armed themselves with hockey sticks and with mosquito net poles and literally attacked the bazaar area, these 2, 3 shops. They said, produce the woman, otherwise we'll sort you out. They said, oh, we know nothing about it. So they set fire to these 3 or 4 shops. And they caught hold of a few of these shopkeepers and really thrashed them with the mosquito net poles and the hockey sticks, which is the only armament they had. Since off-duty hours, all the weapons are locked in a court. Now this conflagration took place, and the Delhi area commander was Major General Omkar Bhandari, who was my coursemate from the IM. I became a Major General, I was in military operations. This chap is a Major General. He's from Gurkhas, and he belongs to Himachal. His wife belongs to a village near where my land, my father's land is in Dar, and between Dharamsa and Dar, there's a place called Dari. They belong to Dari. He's a very good friend of mine. And we've been in the academy for 2 years together, and I knew him very well. So he rang me up. He said, this is what's happened, and I am taking action. I said, what action will you take? He said, I'll sort all these steps. I'll bring peace and quiet here. I'll tell you tomorrow. So they were at it all night. The policemen, the shopkeepers went and reported to the local police that these army chaps have come here and beating us up. So when the police landed up there, that battery of gunners who were trying to find the lady, they beat up the police chaps also. So that little thing took place. And now many of these shopkeepers belong to the Congress party. These are the, what do you call it, the private army of the political party. Every party has the gundas, So they ran straight Indira Gandhi, the prime minister. They look here, the armies come here and they burnt our shops and they beaten us up. And the police came here and they beaten up the police. So for God's sake, save us. So she rang General Vaidya at about 3 in the morning to say, General, your army has gone berserk. So please control them and all that. So he rang me up. So I said, look, cool it. General Bhandari is already spoken to me. So I said, I relax. You relax. He said, but the Prime Minister rang me up. I said, all right, tell her to go to sleep. And I suggested to General Vaidya, you also have a good night's rest. We'll sort it out tomorrow because General Bhandari will explain to me all that happened in the morning. So General Vaidya told the Vice Chief to look into this case. So I got a series of calls from General Ganju Rawat to say, what the hell are you doing about this? I said, relax, tomorrow morning. I've called Bhandari to my office at 8 o'clock and we'll come and meet you at 8:30 or 9. So when Bhandari came to my office, I asked him, I said, what happened? He said, this is what's happened. They've recovered the girl and those Congress gundas deserve what they got. See? So you can't capture a military wife and then get away with it. So those chaps have reacted. And so the shops are burned. They've only made a complaint to police that our shops are burned and beaten. Nobody talks about the woman who was captured. And when the army tried to put a police case to say that the woman was captured, the police would not record that FIR. See, this is the way it happened. So I said, fine, let's go and see the Vice Chief. So the Vice Chief was there and he gave us hell. The Defense Secretary is very angry, everybody is very angry, and the Prime Minister wants. We said, there's no question. So the Prime Minister had asked that there should be a court of inquiry in the army to punish those, to find out who were responsible, and then have a court martial and punish those responsible for this burning and beating up of the shops. So Bhandari and I told the Vice Chief that is not going to be done. Just then the RRM, Mr. Jain Singh Deo, rang up the Vice Chief and said, look, the Prime Minister wants to know what's happened of that. So he said that was the RRM, he also wants to. So I said, tell the Prime Minister and the Defense Secretary and the RRM that if you want a court of inquiry, there has to be a joint court of inquiry between the civil authority and the military to find out the facts. we will not have a military court of inquiry just to punish military people. We want those gundas to be punished. And just because they belong to the Congress party does not mean that they get away with this. And next time they do something like this, they'll be killed. It's as simple as that. So if you want peace and quiet in Delhi cantonment, tell the public and the people running shops to behave themselves. So this is the point we put up. So anyway, General Bedi asked me about this, and since he and I knew each other very well and a lot of confidence, I said, General, we are not going to back down on this. Then he said, you go and see the defense secretary. So the defense secretary was a Mr. Call, a very clever gentleman. And he said, General, what is this? The army is berserk, beating up civilians. I said, your civilians are berserk. Army is disciplined. You do this to the army, you'll get it back on the spot. Because you can't save your people just because they belong to a political party and just because the prime minister is your boss and you're bending over backwards to please her, it's not going to work. So that's it. So if you want a court of inquiry, you have to joint court of inquiry. Otherwise, nothing will happen. And we are going to take no action against the military people. And we want to warn the public there because they put their shops on the basis of the army permitting them to put their shops. They remove their sanction and they can get out from it. All right. So that case caused a lot of heat, but no action, because the civilians were not prepared to have a joint court of inquiry. This is the thing. And I think Prime Minister also understood that you may be a political party, but you can't play games, nasty games with military personnel. There are many cases like this which should happen. We are slowly maturing into a more sensible country. But these sort of things happen. Respect between communities and respect between military and civilians, etc., cannot be had unless all sides understand that you cannot take advantage of a big soldier who is a disciplined person, but you can't play games. All right. And the law is a very interesting point, because how does the law take its course? Judges can be bought, and judges have, all sorts of ideas about how things are done. Anyway, that incident occurred. There's another case. There was a NAM conference, non-aligned movement conference. Now this non-aligned movement conference, a lot of people are coming from abroad. Yasser Arafat from Palestine leader was coming. And Fidel Castro from Cuba was coming. Indira Gandhi was hosting. There were about 20 heads of state coming from Africa and other places with a non-aligned movement to have a conference in Vigyan Bhavan in Delhi. So there was a police officer who had become a Director General Police, and then he had been, his name was Rajeshwar, and he was now advisor in the Ministry of Home Affairs, in the rank of Special Secretary, Ministry of Home Affairs. He later became Governor of UP also, very efficient officer. So he held a conference where I was called as the representative of Vigyan. So he had a large number of people on the conference, and he had police, and he had bureaucracy, and he had so many others, giving them orders as to security measures, etc., for protection during the NAM conference. Special protection for others whom a large number of terrorists would like to shoot. So he gave these orders. Then he turned to Omkar Bhandari, was the Delhi area commander, and I was from the military option. Two of us were attending the conference. Yes, and the military general here. Please take 20 military police officers and line them up in front of the Vigyan Bhavan, in their uniform with their white belts and things and all, smart cap. All should be 6 feet tall. So I said, very good. What is the purpose of these people being lined up? He says, because the terrorists if there are any, you'd be so afraid of these policemen. Then not one of them would dare to do anything wrong. So I said, look, Mr. Rajeshwar, it doesn't work that way. A terrorist will be up on a tree somewhere with a long distance shooting rifle with a telescope lens. If he wants to shoot Yarapath, he'll put a bullet through his head. That's it. What is the military police going to do? He said, oh, the military police will take him on. I said, I'm sorry. I don't think they're very good at shooting because they're not allowed to shoot. Maybe they're not that well practiced as an infantry battalion. So he said, then General, what do you want? I said, there has to be a full military battalion organized there. I'll locate them properly in hidden positions, not seen by anyone. They'll be on the roofs, they'll be on the trees, they'll be all over the place. And when anybody moves out of turn or the glint of a weapon, we'll shoot him or capture him. Military police can't do that. He said, no, but the Prime Minister wants 20 military police and that's enough. I said, Prime Minister has no idea about security. She's not a security expert. She's just a politician. So I'm afraid we'll have to tell her that this is not the way to do that. He said, but you're answering back. You're only a major general. I'm special secretary. You're answering back. I said, I'm not answering back. I'm telling you the fact. And we are not going to do any silly thing like what you're telling. And if the Prime Minister said, don't go ahead and tell her. No. So they were very upset. And a complaint was sent about me to the Defense Secretary and others. Everybody laughed about it. Nobody bothered. Anyway, eventually the matter went to the Vice Chief. Again, he called us about this problem. And Defense Secretary called me. He was wrong. I said, look, if you want protection, it has to be done properly. I'll do it. When you're lining up 20 people in military police makes it. Eventually, the RRM came to Singh Joe. He said, General, put a few policemen there, please, the Prime Minister, and you go ahead with your battalion also. So that's what we did. You know, politics is a funny thing where politicians and civilians think they know more about security than a man who's in charge of it. Simple as that. But nevertheless, to cut the long story short, a bit of this and a bit of that, so everybody is pleased. At the same time, you have the protection. And I must tell you, I attended this NAM conference. Very well run indeed. And so friendly. I mean, Yasser Arafat and others were on the stage, and Fidel Castro came and he gave Indira Gandhi a big hug. You see the television on those days. It was in the news all over the world because America didn't like Fidel Castro because, you know, communist country in Cuba. Whenever they're really upset that these Indians are, you know, hugging communists who are horrible people. India does not believe that people are horrible. They're not horrible. Everybody has their system. I think the Western world doesn't realize that. And even throughout my career, even at army headquarters level when I was the chief, I found such anger of people from US against Soviet Union, for instance, or against the Palestinians, or against somebody. And what for? They are human beings, just like you. They're doing their politics, you're doing your politics. They don't have to obey you. Why should they obey you? See, I told many Americans also at that time that you're a democratic country, but your democracy ends on the coastline of America. Outside in the world, you want no Democrat. You want a dictator who obeys your orders. That's no method of running the world. Anyway, hopefully more wisdom has come in by these days, and maybe after a few more wars like in Ukraine, we'll get more wisdom here. This NAM conference was disliked by the US and the Western world because they said, India, you're a democratic country, but you're sitting on the fence. You are neither here nor there. And therefore, either you are with us or we take it you're against us. We should tell them come off it. Just because you're unfriendly with the Soviet Union doesn't mean that we have to be unfriendly. I said, we, for instance, are rather disgusted with the Pakistanis and the terrorism. But we are friendly with Pakistan. We're giving them weapons, equipment, etc. And when we ask you, that, look, why are you doing this? You say, well, we have separate relations with Pakistan, we have separate relations with India. So I said, well, why can't India have separate relations with you and separate relations with the Soviets? So conflict in the world is going to continue when there is hate. I told you some time back about the 10 Commandments that Moses brought, Baba Musa in Islam, Moses in Christianity. One of those commandments is love thy enemy as thyself. This is an ancient order. I mean, yes, fighting is because of politics. It doesn't mean that the other guy is any less than you or that he has to be hated. So in the business of military, one has to understand how uh, you have to deal with these sort of feelings. Uh, Now, another point I want to talk about is the assassination of Indira Gandhi. Now, you know, Indira Gandhi was assassinated on the 31st of October, 1984. Now, let's go a bit before this. There was a question of a person called Sant Bhindranawale. Sant Bhindranawale was basically a terrorist. He called himself a Sant. Sant means the same. And he was in his own place in southern Punjab. And Indira Gandhi asked him to go to the Golden Temple and take charge. He went to the Golden Temple, took charge of the Golden Temple. And when he was in charge of the Golden Temple, he's a criminal. He's a terrorist. He had a few army officers retired with him, Sikh officers. One of them was a chap called Shabek Singh. Now, Shabek Singh was a major general, and he was court-martialed and reduced in rank and thrown out of the army because of having a glad eye for young officers' wives. So he was an area commander, Central India, and this complaint came about him. So he was court-martialed and he was removed from the army. He went and joined Sant Bhindranawale. Now he's a very good infantry soldier. So they occupied the Akal Takht. Have you been to the Golden Temple? All right. So Golden Temple in the center of the Sarovar. And on one side is the Akal Takht, the built up areas all around. There are 7 or 8 floors above ground and maybe 7 or 8 or more floors below ground that nobody knows about. A very interesting place. So Sant Bhindranawale to control. Now, the Punjab police wanted to sort this out. This is about 1983 or 82. So, the police mixes with the locals. They are not separate from the locals. The army keeps its distance. But the police is supposed to be civilians. Director, the DIG police, Deputy Inspector General of Police, I think his name was Atwal. He came to the goats of the Golden Temple and said, look, there are a lot of criminals inside, and tell Bhindranawale to come forward. And so and so crooks are heading here, please come forward. So we can arrest you and examine your case, bring you before the law. So one of the Sikh terrorists shot him dead from the gates, minarets on both sides of the gate of the Golden Temple. After that, the Punjab police wanted to attack the Golden Temple. But Indira Gandhi, being the Prime Minister, she stopped them. She said, look, you lay off. Let me handle this. It's a political game, nothing to do with the police. So she stopped the police from entering the Golden Temple. Now, meanwhile, because Bhindranawale was her man, what was the purpose of this? The purpose of this Nivedita was that there was an Akali government in Punjab, and Indira Gandhi's desire to have only Congress governments in all states, she felt that she should create a law and order problem so that she could have the authority after the president's assent to dismiss that government. And this was her technique. She did it in many cases, more of it later. So Bhindranawale was planted there. and he became a law unto himself. Many people who used to enter the Golden Temple to pray were captured. And he started ordering things around, even to the extent of saying that what postings police officers should get. That had to be done by the Punjab Akali government. He said, so and so should go there, so and so should go there to get his own men posted in places of value to him. This went a bit too far. And then eventually, as luck would have it, karmo ka phal, as they say in India, you take wrong actions, wrong results take place. After a few years, that's 1983 or so, 82, 83, Bindra Nawari became so powerful that he stopped listening to Indira Gandhi. He started doing his own thing. He started ruling Punjab from there, or trying to rule Punjab from there. So Indira Gandhi got very upset. And she called General Vaidya to say that you take the army and attack the Golden Temple and kill this Bindra Nawari and kill that Shabik Singh who's doing the defenses. So General Vaidya came to us in the MO directorate and said, this is what the Prime Minister's orders are. So we in the MO directorate put our heads together, sitting with the chief, and we said, we don't think that's the way to go. Now, K.K. Hazare had gone away, he'd become a lieutenant general and he'd gone to command a corps. He commanded a corps in the Jammu area. And a man called Somana, now I know these people very well because they were with me in the IM, Indian Military Academy. So Somana, he's from the Guards. He had become lieutenant general and the DG, Director General Military Operations. So he and myself and Tabi Nair, the 3 or 4 people sat down with the chief to discuss, to thresh out this question. And we suggested that Indira Gandhi has got no right to ask the army to intervene in a matter which is entirely political. So it's a very dangerous game to play. And we suggest you buck it. So the chief is a very decent man. He said, she's the boss. If she gives the order, we have to obey. So he said, no, our view is she's not the boss. She's not a dictator. She's the prime minister elected, and only legal orders given by her should be followed by the army. The question of attacking some place and killing some people is not a legal order. You can't order army to go and kill someone. And nor can you order army to interfere in civil affairs. So constitutionally, as per the constitution of which we are the slaves of the constitution, you don't have to obey this order. So you have to buck it. So he went back to Indira Gandhi and said that, look, my think tank and the military operations sector is saying this is not the way to go. This is a political matter. And we request that you use the police or something else like that, or whatever way you like, not the army, because the army could have dissension to do this. So she said, well, you're head of a chief, you can't even support your own prime minister. So who's the Western Army commander? Now, the Western Army commander was General Sundar. So she said, call him, I'll deal with that. So he told General Sundarji to meet the Prime Minister. Now, we didn't like that in the MO because there's no question of an army commander going above the head of the chief and meeting the Prime Minister. Not accepted. But nonetheless, since he told General Sundarji to go there, so General Sundarji went there. And Indira Gandhi told him to do the same thing. I don't know what the conversation took place, but we heard. When you hear from staff and others, it may be true, it may be false. Maybe General Sundarji asked, what's in it for me? She said, I'll make you the next chief. And he was senior, he was to come up. But you please do this job because Bindra Nawari had defied the authority of the Prime Minister. And he's taken control of the Golden Temple. He's ordering out the whole of Punjab. Even the government of Punjab can't do anything. So he said, you should have used the police. She said, yes, I told the police, but they refused to take my orders. See, Punjab Armed Police said that when our DIG Atwal was killed 2 years ago, you refused to let us act against the Golden Temple. Why? Because he's your man.